Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something pretty ambitious. We're breaking down the entire core story of the Bible, from Genesis all the way to the New Testament. To do this, we're following the roadmap laid out in a really detailed sermon by Pastor Elvis for church. Let's get into it.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to follow the story through 6 key stages. It all starts with creation and that one very first command. Then we'll see how sin enters the picture, leading to a broken world. From there, we'll look at the big promise made to Abraham, how Jesus is presented as the final solution, and then the whole point of it all, how to get that original lost relationship back.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. Picture this, a perfect world. According to the sermon, this is where it all kicks off. God creates, everything. And then he forms the first man, Adam, literally from the dust of the earth, and then creates the first woman, Eve, as his partner. Now, you might think a perfect paradise would have a long list of rules, right? Nope, there's just one single command. And this isn't just a minor detail, it's absolutely central. This one rule sets the stage for the main conflict that's going to drive this entire story forward. So if everything's perfect, what goes wrong? How does it all fall apart? Well, this is where the sermon introduces a new character, a rebellious angel, what we know as Satan. He comes onto the scene with one goal: to tempt humanity into breaking that one single rule. So what is sin, according to this teaching? It's actually defined really simply. It's not this big, complicated list of do's and don'ts. It's just disobeying a direct command from God. That's it. So when Adam and Eve ate that forbidden fruit, that was the moment. That's the act that brought sin into the story. And of course, that one act of disobedience wasn't without consequences. In fact, the consequences were immediate, and they were huge. The sermon breaks them down into these 3 specific curses. And these weren't just small punishments. They fundamentally changed the human condition and even the world itself. It's kind of like throwing a rock into a pond. That first act of sin wasn't just a splash. It created ripples, and those ripples spread out, leading to a world that just kept spiraling deeper and deeper into brokenness. And you can see just how fast things got out of hand. It goes from one broken rule to the very first murder, Cain killing his brother Abel. Then things get so bad, so wicked, that it leads to a massive flood that covers the earth, saving only Noah's family. And even after that, human pride rears its head at the Tower of Babel, leading God to confuse their languages and scatter everyone. It's a pretty steep decline. Okay, so the situation looks pretty bleak, right? Humanity is scattered, broken, and divided. But this is where the sermon explains a major shift in God's plan. Instead of a wide-angle approach, the focus narrows, way down. God zooms in on just one person to kickstart a long-term solution. And that one person is Abraham. This is such a crucial pivot in the narrative. The story's focus shifts to him, then to his son Isaac, and his grandson Jacob. And Jacob's 12 sons? They become the foundation for the 12 tribes of Israel. So you see, this is the very beginning of God's rescue mission, starting with just one family. All right, so for hundreds of years, this nation of Israel followed a set of laws from God. A big part of that was a system of animal sacrifices, a way to get forgiveness for sin. But the sermon is really clear on this point. This whole system was just temporary. It was like a placeholder, a stand-in, until the real, permanent solution arrived. And this is the climax of the entire story. A descendant of Abraham, Jesus, arrives on the scene. And his death, as the sermon explains it, isn't a tragedy, it's the answer. It's presented as the one-time, perfect, final sacrifice. No more repeated animal sacrifices. This one event is meant to permanently solve the sin problem that started all the way back with Adam. Okay, so we've got the problem, a broken relationship with God. And we've got the ultimate solution, the sacrifice of Jesus. So the big question now is, how does that apply to someone today? How do you actually tap into that solution and get back that connection that was lost at the very beginning? Well, the sermon boils it all down to a pretty clear 3-step path. It's laid out as the way for anyone to restore that personal connection with God. First, you have to believe. Then there's the symbolic act of baptism. And finally, receiving the Holy Spirit, which enables that direct relationship. When you step back and look at the whole thing, it's pretty incredible. From the Garden of Eden, through the flood, the promise to Abraham, all the way to Jesus, the sermon frames all of it as one single connected story. It's presented as God's long-term, deliberate, and loving plan to bring humanity back to where it all started, in a relationship with Him.
And that pretty much brings our summary to a close. It really is one epic story, isn't it? A story of loss and a long journey toward restoration that has, without a doubt, shaped the world we live in. So we'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. Thanks so much for joining us.